Welcome back to Di's Home and Garden, and today we're in the kitchen. Now, for those of you who haven't been to the channel before, it's just exactly what it says, home and garden. So a lot of the time we're out in the garden, we're doing things out there, big vegetable garden, lots of flowers. Sometimes I'll pick produce, bring it in and cook it, but today we're actually in the kitchen and cooking a nice recipe. So these recipes are gluten-free. So for anybody who has any issues with gluten, this is an excellent recipe. And for some reason, I've had a lot of people say, oh, gluten-free, it's going to taste like cardboard. Well, that's not the case. This is just a general recipe, but it's not specifically made for someone who's gluten intolerant. It's just a recipe that tastes good, it looks good, it's yummy, it's a nice treat, and it just happens to be gluten-free, that we're not using any flour in it. So what are we cooking? So we're going to do two recipes today because the second one is just a variation on the first. So we're doing coconut macaroons and we're also doing almond macaroons. So we just replace the coconut in the first recipe with almond meal and some almond essence. But I will go through it. So first off, we'll have a look at what ingredients. The ingredients that we're going to be using, first off, is egg whites. Now you'll see that I've got these in containers with dates on them. I've had them in the freezer. I got them out, left them in the fridge to defrost overnight. So we'll be using those. Now I have egg whites left over because I make an egg yolk custard. So I only use the egg yolks and I don't use the egg whites. And I always put the egg whites into the freezer for use in some other recipe. Could be this, it could be pavlova. Sometimes I'll just bulk up an omelette. So I'll have normal eggs in it and then I'll throw in some extra egg whites. So there's lots of uses for them and they don't go to waste. We're using almond meal for the almond macaroons and we're using coconut for the coconut macaroons. Also using caster sugar and cherries. And we're also using a mixer and some bowls. Now, because we're going to be whipping up these egg whites, we don't need to make them stiff like we would for pavlova, but we still need to whip them up. It's always good to make sure that you don't have any residue, like any oils or anything like that from previously used bowls. You have to make sure that they're really clean. Not so particular in this recipe, but if we were making pavlova, we'd really have to make sure that there's no residue, and we would normally wash the bowls out again, even though they're clean, in hot soapy water and dry them, and also the beaters to ensure that there's no fat or any residue on them, because if you're wanting to whip them up to a stiff peak, like for meringues, you need to make sure everything is really, really clean. So let's get on to it. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to preheat the oven to 160 degrees for a fan force oven, which I have just done. Now, on to making these. Just putting the whites into the bowl. And we just whisk those until they're frothy. They don't need to be stiff for this recipe. Okay, there you have it. So they are nice and frothy. Now we add our sugar. So our sugar is 1.5 cups. I'm doubling this recipe, by the way. It does call for 2 egg whites, but I've used 4. So all the other ingredients have been doubled. So that's 1.5 cups of caster sugar. we just whisk that until it's well combined. The next thing to do is to add our coconut, and I just need something to stir that with. So we'll just stir that through until it's all combined. And that was 4 cups of coconut that I've added there. That's desiccated coconut. That looks like it's, oh no, there's still some dry coconut in the bottom. Keep going because I want to make sure that this is all mixed thoroughly. Okay, there you have it. Now we've got our baking trays here with some parchment paper on them. This is some baking paper on them. Now I find the best way to do the next step is to actually wet your hands. So that's what I'm going to do, and then we roll those into little balls. So we just wet our hands. You can see that they're just slightly wet. We grab a bit of that and we just form it into a ball. We just pop it down and we just make sure that they're all the same size so that they cook evenly. So I'll just continue on that until I've got them all done, because once you've seen a few done, you don't need to see them all. So I think 3 is enough, and then we'll come back when I've finished that. Okay, once we've done that, I've got some cherries here, some glacé cherries, and they've been cut in half. We just pop one on to the top of each of these, press it down just a little bit, not too hard or you'll break apart the coconut macaroon. So just press it in just a little bit. We put all these on, then we pop it into the oven. It takes about 12 to 15 minutes, just until they start to brown. So I'll finish putting these cherries on, then I'll pop them in the oven, and I'll bring you back when I bring them out the oven. Okay, while they're cooking, we will get on and make the almond macaroons. So, as I said, it's the same recipe. We'll just we're just switching out the coconut for the almonds, and we're going to be putting in some almond essence, just a splash of that. So we're adding the sugar, same quantities as before. That was 4 egg whites and 1.5 cups of caster sugar. Now we're just going to add the 4 cups of almond meal and a splash of almond essence. This is almond essence, almond extract. You don't want to add too much of that because it is a very, very strong flavour. And while a little bit of it tastes nice, if you put too much in it, it actually tastes awful. So, yeah, I just used a small amount. And you're best off just adding a small amount. Then you can have a taste of this once you've added it. And if you think you might like to add a little bit stronger, then you can add it bit by bit. So we're just mixing that through thoroughly. And we'll just roll these out, but what we decorate these with is not cherries. We decorate them with almonds, blanched almonds. So you don't need to specifically buy blanched almonds. You can use normal almonds. You just soak them in a bit of boiling water for a few minutes. These have probably been in for about 2 or 3 minutes. And then you should be able to pop the skin off them. Some of them are a little more stubborn than others. So I just need to get through this bowl and take the skins off these almonds, and then we'll use those to decorate the tops of them once we've rolled them into little balls. So we'll come back when we've done that. And there you have it. I do have one more tray of the almond biscuits in the oven. So you can see that that has made an awful lot of biscuits. So they'll be lovely to enjoy with a cup of tea. And I'm also going to try to freeze some. So I don't know how successful that's going to be, but we'll see how we go. If you tried this recipe and you'd like to leave some comments, please do. I do try to answer any comments that are left. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section. But I do hope that you try this recipe and that you enjoy it. Thanks for joining me. Bye.